It's our human failing. I mean, history has repeated itself on these things. I mean, you know, the Jared Diamond book where, you know, where was it, Iceland or Greenland, and they knew that bringing in, you know, an invasive species of livestock, even though it wasn't termed that way, and creating pasturable land was killing them. They did it anyways. It killed away a life that was sustainable, and they knowingly continued it. I mean, I just feel like we like to think that we are the most sophisticated, smartest animals on the planet, and I'm not sure we are.
Every little kid is taught that they shouldn't talk to strangers. I mean, do you talk to strangers? How do you know if a stranger is worth speaking to? Hey kid, don't talk to strangers. Where's my daughter at? I'm gonna go get my daughter in here in a minute and tell her she's 3 weeks old, but she needs to know this.
I would say that I grew up in a family that was democratic and liberal in nature. As my parents became, they're not wealthy, but I guess, you know, a comfortable middle class, their views became more Republican as money mattered more in terms of having more money. I've always been a registered Democrat, but I never voted up and down. I voted based on who I thought would do the best job or spoke most directly to me and my beliefs. I think in the last several election cycles, that's really changed. I think that has built these boxes, if you will. For me, what Trump has unleashed, he's given permission to racism and prejudice, and I think it was latent. It's been there the whole time. I think he's just given everyone permission.
You will not replace us!
You will not replace us! You will not replace us!
I grew up with a father who has a very strong moral compass and instilled that in us. I mean, just a sense of, I mean, I guess we'd call it community spirit now, but it was then just, you know, lending out a helping hand when someone needed a helping hand, and trying to always put yourself in the other person's shoes. I don't feel there's a reciprocal arrangement anymore, and I feel what's inconvenient is just denied, like climate change, and that makes me question my faith in humanity, that we can be not just a witness to what's happening, but complicit in what's happening, and yet we don't know how to even save ourselves. You know, I think we all have our own truths, and I think that's what's happening a lot today, is because everything is so divisive and partisan and divided, we find our own echo chamber and stay in it. I find I have to just keep reading a broad spectrum of news to feel like I'm not just listening to myself. And I don't watch TV. I haven't had TV in 25 years. And I've never been a fan of social media. I feel that sharing the death of your mother or your grandmother and asking people to like it or not like it is very personal, and to me it devalues the person that you're working to remember or honor. Well, I think a fact is different than an opinion, and I think that's the gray area that we're getting into. Is the lines have been blurred. I mean, the fact is, it's daylight right now. No, I think it feeds into this idea of a self-selecting echo chamber, that all these boxes that you were talking about, like we find one that fits and believe who we want to believe, and that becomes the truth, that becomes the facts, because it's what we want to hear.
Show me your hands. Good. 5-7, shots fired. 7-8 down. Show me your hands.
I mean, I think some of the shootings they defy any kind of comprehension. But I guess more fundamentally even is, when did, I was brought up that police officers were trained shoot to maim, not to kill. And I don't know when it happened that they just shoot to kill. And I think it's made us, I mean, I respect police officers and I think they have a difficult job, but, and, you know, that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, not just keeping law and order, but they're also, you know, we have fractured families that impact kids, and and these kids don't behave well all the time, and, you know, it becomes so systemic. And I think as well, this country has always had, most people have some kind of prejudice, whether they can admit it or not, and that comes from a familiarity with where you grew up and who you grew up with, and what's strange is strange and not always understood. But, you know, I think the video that really expresses this sense of injustice is the officer who shot at point-blank range the black man who was driving a car with his girlfriend or wife, who shot the whole thing. I mean, and he was reaching for his permit to show the officer that he had license to carry and was being completely upfront. And even when that had been communicated to the officer, he kept firing.
Tonight, a family outraged after a Minnesota jury acquitted the officer who fatally shot Philando Castile moments before this infamous video was live streamed on Facebook by his girlfriend.
It gives me a deep distrust of the whole justice system too, when someone where the evidence is so compelling and so obvious and so black and white, and it doesn't lead to a conviction. I don't understand that. It makes me suspicious that there is like a deep state.
Just as the school day was ending, the shooting started. This cell phone video captured the gunfire and the screams of the high school students trapped inside their classrooms.
I'm coming out to the east side with the casualty and ambulance standing by, critical casualty.
We are witnesses to the most ruthless attack on a president and the people who voted for him, and the free system that allowed it to happen in American history. From the highest levels of government to their media, universities, and billionaires, their hateful defiance of his legitimacy is an insult to each of us. But the ultimate insult is that they think we're so stupid that we'll let them get away with it. These saboteurs slashing away with their leaks and sneers, their phony accusations and gagging sanctimony, drive their daggers through the heart of our future, poisoning our belief that honest custody of our institutions will ever again be possible, so they can then build their utopia from the ashes of what they burned down. No, their fate will be failure, and they will perish in the political flames of their own fires. We are the National Rifle Association of America, and we are freedom's safest place.
You know, we should go back to the first question. What is something I don't even pretend to understand it. You know, I was listening to an NPR or some radio program, and you know, until the 1970s and the Black Panthers, no one had even heard of the Second Amendment. You know, I mean, you know, from what I heard, and I don't know for a fact, the Black Panthers started promoting it as their right to carry arms. And, you know, it's interesting how things can change and evolve over the course of history.
When this group met Saturday in Richmond, we took aerial shots of them from a helicopter, and the meeting is they sealed off a block in Richmond with armed guards at each corner and with riflemen on the roof. In the midst of this meeting, and the pictures show it, there were children out on bicycles playing. You know, I think too long we've listened to these people who are afraid of some kind of bureaucratic takeover of arms. We've got to emphasize again that no one wants to touch the legitimate hunter, but we've got to protect society from nuts with guns.
And while the Constitution, I believe, is a largely incredibly complex, forward-thinking document, it's, you know, the intent of what was written then versus how it's being interpreted today, I think is being exploited, and in a way that's manipulative to serve particular agendas.
Now, I don't mean to say that this is just a California problem. I think the federal government has been extraordinarily lax in this field, both in allowing this junk, much of it foreign-made, into the United States, and in not passing laws to protect us once it's inside.
You know, as well, the fact that the NRA used to be like, you know, an exclusive private little club that was almost like a country club, and whose main program was teaching gun safety.
And therefore, you have every right to ask that question of me, and I'm here to tell you that I will stand for the things. Are you going to be accepting money from the NRA in the future? I've always supported, I will always accept the help of anyone who agrees with my agenda.
All this money being poured in, and I believe elections are bought, or can be bought. You know, what is that taking? What would happen if that money was put into nonprofits with a purpose to do social good? The arts, social services, education, health. And, you know, I guess when thinking of like an absolute hypocrisy that I don't think anyone can contest is these elected officials are making decisions about our health care while they enjoy complete 100% paid for, unfettered, deluxe health care, compliments of the very people they're taking health care away from. There are rules that we have to live by to live together as a society, and so the personal freedoms of your right to carry an arm or your objection to carrying an arm, I think, do they conform with the society we believe in, we want to have, which is to provide opportunities to our citizens, our neighbors, treat them with respect, provide a climate that is conducive to raising your children and giving them some reasonable chance of a future. This idea of opportunity in a free market and this DNA that Americans supposedly have was because we were a nation of immigrants, and it was a pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and that's a quality that was admired. And it's been exploited now, where there are the haves and the have-nots, and I don't, you know, being religious and being a part of a church or a congregation or a synagogue used to be also about being a collective part of a community and how you took care of that community. And I don't think, now it's like a righteous thing, like I believe in God and you don't, so therefore, you know, my 10 commandments are better than your social order. Like, thou shalt not kill. I mean, I think we both agree on that, both sides. And my father said something about, well, you know, daughter, calls me daughter, you know, there's been a lot of really good things done in the name of the, you know, the Catholic religion. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. You know, I think there's probably been more horrible things done in the name of the God and the Catholic religion. And the way you say that also implies that other gods, other religions the Catholic Church doesn't view them as doing any good in the world. And we got into a rather, I wouldn't say it was kind of a frank conversation, and, you know, coming from an upbringing where, you know, children are to respect their elders, it was an interesting conversation, and I think it was heated, it was difficult. But to your point is, the next morning woke up, my father and I both get up insanely early. I woke up and could hear that he was up. And I didn't want to, I was procrastinating getting out of bed because it meant I would have to confront him. And you know, I was feeling badly that we had such a kind of an awful conversation the night before. And it ended up my father saying, you know, that he cleared the air right away. It was good, it was positive. And I think, to your point, we walked away with a better understanding about where each of us are coming from and more respect for the other side. I'm losing faith in humanity, and not individually, but as a society, I think we overestimate our ability, and as a result don't recognize our weaknesses, and it's kind of, you know, if you can't identify the problem, you'll never find the solution. And I think we think we're invincible in some way, that, you know, whether you're religious or not, I mean, that humans are going to figure it out, tech will figure it out, you know, the next generation, they're so smart, they're going to figure it out. I mean, somehow, as humans, we're always going to just, don't worry, we're going to figure it out. And I think we've kind of reached the end of the line. You know, I think compassion is usually taken in the context of someone who is less able to do what you can do, and now, you know, but in this environment, it's compassion for someone who doesn't share the same beliefs or values that you do. And that's a good question. Like, if you don't share my beliefs and values, can I have compassion? I don't know. Actually, I had never thought about it. I mean, I find between cell phones and texts and social media and computers and emails and telephone calls, like, you know, I don't think I'm the only one. It's anti-social media. I don't communicate anymore, and I just can't process the information that quickly. And I'm spending less quality time with humans and more time with technology. And I think, and also just a barrage of information that I can't put into context, and I can't process, and I can't. And I think we're all like just struggling with that. A sense of place, a sense of being a part of something that, you know, you can be a bad part of it, or you can be a good part of it, or you can be a both part of it. But it's, you know, a community's a unit not unlike a family. I mean, why is a family important? I thought I knew Hudson, and then when I started working here, I realized I didn't know Hudson at all. I had no sense of the community. I was one of the people attracted to the shiny new side of Warren Street, or the rural beauty of these gorgeous farms and the river view, but I had no idea. And now, you know, what makes Hudson so interesting is we do have a diverse population, and that gives it a kind of an urban flavor that you don't often find upstate. And, you know, that combined with the New York City immigrants gives it a cultural sophistication as well. And I think if you live in the city, you really not just come to appreciate, but expect and want a diverse community, you know, because that is New York. You know, and it sounds like a cliche, but the power of the arts to inform and transform your worldview, and they can be fun, they can be healthy, they're like a language that can help bring people together. And that's how I feel about Hudson Hall is, you know, the role that we can play in helping to give kids, you know, a sense of curiosity and adventure, at the same time some life skills, and, you know, but this community where, like, poor people, rich people, talented people, you know, people who belong on stage and people who don't belong on stage and are part of the audience that every artist needs. It's everything. The arts are everything. And also, they're oftentimes quite either just beautiful or poignant, or, you know, it's emotionally rewarding, intellectually stimulating, physically demanding. I don't know, I can't think of anything that the arts excludes. I have to say that I found this conversation really good. I mean, you asked a question, because I think what was running through a lot of the points being made is like, we have gotten really good at deflecting and not necessarily reflecting. And, you know, you were pushing, it was like therapy where you're pushing some buttons that are making me think about, you know, my own defenses and how I've built them up, and how we do is just part of the aging process. We're not as naive and innocent anymore. And it feels kind of healthy to like ask myself, like, golly gee, or be like, wow, I don't know how to answer that one, or I probably did 10 years ago and I don't today. So, no, it did. It felt good. And I mean, and to your point of what I think you're trying to accomplish, it legitimately felt good. And I was not looking forward to this.